the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
More managerial for the Blue Jays. What did you see?
I think with the Blue Jays, it's just the same thing that they've struggled with all season. This is a lineup that just for some reason is not hitting for power and was not scoring runs in particular, wasn't performing with men in scoring position and in high leverage clutch situations. I don't know that there's anything you can necessarily draw from that other than I think there's been a lot made of Toronto's hitters upping their contact rates, but seeing dips in power. I think you can make the argument maybe Toronto hitters were getting a little too contact happy, but making bad contact in the process. I think that's really the only. But to me, I don't know what else you can really point to. I mean, Bo Bichette got hurt toward the end of the season, and I think that clearly affected him. I have no idea what to make of Vlad Jr.'s season. I think there are some things that can worry you a bit. George Springer had probably his worst offensive season as a full-time professional player. He is only getting older. This was always going to be kind of the worry for the Jays at the back half of that deal for Springer, that eventually, once he now into his early and mid 30s, that, the production was going to start to decline. Matt Chapman had a terrible season aside from the month of April. He's a free agent next year. I doubt he comes back to Toronto, but a lot of that lineup success was banking on him being kind of consistently productive 30-homer guy. That didn't really happen. Alejandro Kirk took a big step back. I think another one of those situations where there's a lot of contact, but not particularly a lot of hard optimized contact. I kind of worry about that with Kirk going forward. Dalton Varsho took a step back from what he did last year, which I think was to a certain degree expected, that there was going to be some regression, but certainly took a big chunk out of his production offensively. Whit Merrifield looks completely cooked as a hitter at this point. There was really, for the last 2 months of the season, the best hitter on the Blue Jays was Davis Schneider, and he more or less ceased to exist by the time October rolled around. John Schneider didn't even call his name one time during the series. So I don't know. I mean, the Blue Jays are going to have some decisions to make. I think the good thing for them is that there aren't really any major free agents on that roster for them. Chapman is the biggest one, and considering how little he contributed, I think overall to the season, that doesn't seem like something the Blue Jays will have a terribly hard time replacing. But I think you do have to worry if you are the Blue Jays that it's this offense that is supposed to be the key to making everything work for you just did not come together. And some of that can be injury, but some of that's also poor performance. In particular, I think whatever's going on with Vlad Jr., with the power outage he had, with the unproductive season he had, you've got to figure out where the consistency, where to find the consistency. To say nothing of the poor base running he showed all season and the absolutely killer base running mistake he made in Game 2, getting picked off by Sonny Gray and Carlos Correa. A 10 out of 10 on that can't happen scale. I'm not sure. I don't know what to make of it necessarily. I do think that John Schneider is probably out as manager. I think it's probably going to be a pretty easy scapegoating, I think, because of the Barrios Kikuchi decision, which maybe scapegoat is too strong, because I don't necessarily think it was a huge blunder, but obviously it didn't work out. The funny thing about that one being, it very much feels like that was a decision that came from on high. It's just that Schneider decided not to deviate from that course, even though, given the way Barrios was pitching, it does feel like the smart choice, or at least a safe choice, would have just been to let him keep going. So I do expect there to be some changes in Toronto, but I also do wonder what exactly it is they can do with this roster that just has not performed up to its capabilities. I do wonder if, and this is obviously one of those intangible things, I wonder if the Blue Jays also just bought into their own hype a little too much. You had guys like Brandon Belt, who not even a part of this core, just a dude they brought in the offseason, saying before the season started, I think we should be the World Series favorites. Based on what, my dude? Based on a good lineup and Kevin Gausman? Lots of other teams have a good lineup and a really good number one pitcher too. Like, that doesn't, to say nothing about the fact that, as we talked about, the AL East I think was a little disappointing on the whole, but still a lot of difficult, good teams, particularly having seen what the Orioles did last year, knowing that the Rays are always going to be there. I don't know. Maybe some of it is just the Jays getting a little too high on their own supply, because the vibes around that team in particular by the end of the year just did not seem very good. That did not seem like a group of guys that was having a particularly good time out there.
No, and I wonder if, who has more of a lasting impact. I feel like the Blue Jays have more of a lasting impact. The Rays are used to this. They'll bounce back. They'll be totally fine. The Blue Jays, you're more dubious of, did you miss a moment? And that leads me to my next question, John. Of the 4 wildcard losers, Who do you think is most likely not to make it back into the postseason next year?
The Marlins. If only because that roster was just shouldn't have made the postseason in the first place. I think, like I said, more the beneficiary of the Cubs completely falling apart than anything. I mean, they had a good September.